Everyone, welcome to the Stars and Startups podcast with me, Varun Gopini. This is episode 21. We chat with Girish of Magzter. If you have had a smartphone since early days, you'd likely recognize Magzter. It's probably one of the few apps that were there in the Play Store very, very early for someone to download and read. You could access magazines and a lot of cool things with Magzter in those early days. As an iPhone user, back in 2010, 11, Magzter was probably one of my first apps that I had downloaded. Today, Magzter has over 55 million downloads of their apps, and Girish speaks about how they hit a million downloads a month recently and are probably higher now given COVID. On the episode, I speak with Girish Ramdas, the CEO and co-founder of Magzter. We have an unhinged conversation about Magzter, their successes, the journey of starting and scaling Magzter, and also the evolving use cases for the business, the relevance of magazines in today's world. Chatting with Girish was so much fun that we started talking shop right away. We're going to pick up the conversation from where I started recording the conversation, so bear with me. Also, this episode is a little longer than normal because I had a really, really hard time to cut down the episode to approximately an hour that I keep most conversations and recordings to. But, I'll make an exception for Girish because this conversation has so much information for someone who wants to understand the business of how print is going online, how Magzter is making it work, how they started in the early days. Also, if you're a services business, to understand, some of the things that Magzter, which started from a services company, has evolved to what it is today. So I would urge you to take a look at the timeline, maybe find some of the topics that are interesting and relevant to you and probably skip through it and start from there. But otherwise, I would say it's a very, very engaging conversation with Girish, and I'd love for you to give it a listen. So, hey, let's get to the episode.
And then we did app for Sony Music. We've done apps for A.R. Rahman. We've done app for newspapers. So we started, it was like a nice, services. We were in services business, right, with .com Infoway. So it was a nice new niche. And it was like the early days of web development, where one page website will be like 1 lakh rupees.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So we could charge anything
we
want for an app. Yeah. So we are charging lakhs and lakhs for apps. And then it was a great time to be in app development. And that's how we got into app to begin with. And we were not planning to do our own app till 2010, when Steve Jobs launched the iPad, and on stage he showed the I think it was Vogue magazine or one of those Condé Nast or Martha Stewart type magazines with which is so glossy on the iPad, and we are just pretty much he was launching everything at that time. I think it was March 2010, and we said, hey, why don't we also do something on those lines? So that's how we started the ideation and creation of Magzter, thanks to Steve Jobs opening up his iPad and showing a magazine.
When Jobs does it, everything seems larger than life, right? Like you feel
absolutely.
There is that theatrics to it. There is he creates that hype. You can't deny that, right? Like be it the iPod or be it whatever he did. I think there was that value. You're right, because in 2013, I was at Jabong at that point, and we got approached by a few players. Say, hey, why don't you create an app for your website? Because you'll be able to do more. And we thought long and hard, and we counted on the floor how many people had a phone. Right? I was one of the few, of course, having we lived in the US, having bought the iPhone 4, standing in line. I was like, you know what, I have, I'm ahead of the curve, and everybody would come to me and look at my cool iPhone, because again, iPhone also was not, sold here.
Absolutely.
From an official store. There was no sales of iPhones from a store.
I think till recently, everyone was getting it from somewhere else. I think in 2013, pretty much if you had an iPhone, you were like a god.
so the interesting part is we said no because we said, hey, you know what, we're doing fine here. We'll think about apps later. And 2013 or again, I tried to do something else, and then we said, okay, maybe we need an app. Android has started to kind of take the market because of the price point, and trust me, we went 5 months, we had no app because there was so much happening in that space. So you guys having already created the app, I know that everybody who had a phone at that time had your app, right?
Yeah,
Had
absolutely.
a Magzter app.
It was a fun time because before Magzter, we created a Galata magazine app, which was only on the iPhone 3S, if I'm not mistaken. So it was not, the iPad had not yet launched. So when we made that app, but within 2009-10, that 1 year, we had 100,000 downloads for an 85,000 circulation magazine, right? And people from Virginia, from UK, from all over, they were like, "Wow, this is awesome! We can now read Galata magazine on our app." Right. So, and that is one of the thoughts that we said, if there is a need in the market and if there is enough people out there with these, need for apps, and right now there are millions of apps. That time there were only thousands of apps. Like you said, everyone had at least a Galata magazine app. And then, of course, those users, we got them to start using Magster. And we started with only 35 magazines, right? And then, of course, now we've got more than 12,500, and it's growing really big.
That's always in when it's a wild west, and the pioneers or the first few apps or any product in a new market. Typically, you get the advantage of being there first, and people identifying a market with you as well, right? Did that mean over time? I know there's a competitor, Zinio, and then there were a few more other apps that basically created web content modified to just like Flipboard, and there was a bunch of other players where Pulse, where you could see web news as in the app, right? So there was magazines, and then there was news. Did you ever feel like you wanted to get into that space and then not think about just building magazines for magazines?
So we actually started off with a vision to become a reading destination, right? So we wanted anything that you want to read should be on this one app, right? The name Magster came because we were doing magazines. That's how we started, saying, okay, let's see where we know the business, because we used to run our own magazine. So we said, okay, let's do magazines first. So we started with magazines, then we added news feeds, then we added books as well, right? We signed up with all the top book publishers, and then everything is, like you said, Wild West learning curve, right? We realized that when we go into books business, you'll have to contend with Amazon. So, and Amazon was giving deep discounts for digital, which nobody could compete with, right? So therefore, we kind of discontinued even books. We had a bunch of books. We had signed up 1 million books, right? And
Wow.
then we even launched it. And within about 6 months of that service, we realized that we were selling. I mean, our own customers were buying. It was a good experience. We had, reading by text and all the cool stuff that you see on a Kindle, but we were not getting scale. And then when we got into the details, we realized that we were selling at the price. For example, HarperCollins told us to sell at $4.99, and we gave a discount, and it was $3.99, while Amazon is at 99 cents for the same book. So then, how do you compete unless you have $1 billion in hand? So that's kind of where we kind of failed fast. We said, you know what, let's go. We went down that path, and then we said, you know what, let's not go down that path anymore.
But that
So I think
happens
it's
today
all
as well,
learning.
right? But that happens today as well, right? Like the haptic feedback you get from holding a book and that touch and feel of it, gives somebody that nostalgic feeling, and also you feel like you want to, you're paying for something, you need to get something in your hand, and it's not digital, right? I mean, I'm sure
No, I
everybody
think
has
that
that
habit is
experience.
changing. I think anyone who's, I think, maybe 30 plus, 35 plus has these haptic points, right? Even I would like to touch and feel, right? Being 45 right now, I feel old. But, my kids, for example, 13, 14, they don't care. They're like, I want to read. It doesn't matter to me if I can. And for them, they use a Kindle, they use Magster, they use a bunch of reading apps. And for them, I mean, for us growing up, a Harry Potter book meant it was this thick.
Yeah.
So when I saw something this thick, Indians got a bit of an aversion. I would not read, but now it's flat. right? It's only words that you have to read, and you can immerse yourself into it. And of course, the fact that you can carry so much content in the palm of your hand is really compelling. So to answer the other question about Flipboard and others, right? I think we pretty much went into the subscription model, right? So we were not. Flipboard is a free news app. I mean, you can just,
Yeah.
it's like an RSS aggregator, right?
Right.
So there are many such aggregators around, including at that time Pulse and Flipboard, and even now there are a bunch of them who aggregate RSS feeds. And they were the ones who first made Facebook feed available on iPad or iPhone when Facebook themselves didn't have an app, right? Facebook was like Jabong, like you said. They said, no app, everything is on web. So these guys got that, mind share of the customer by allowing Facebook and Twitter beautifully laid out in their Flipboard app. So I think everyone comes with their, secret sauce at the right time. And ours continues to be only subscription business. And till 2015, we were actually only selling single copies and subscriptions of magazines. And only in Jan 2015 did we launch the Magzter Gold, Read All You Can. So it took about 4 or 5 years of us to learn and understand and get the publisher to buy in that what we are doing is actually in their benefit. And now we are not only the world leader in magazines and newspapers, but a year back we also launched newspapers. So now we have newspapers, magazines. A lot of book publishers are in touch with us to go back to say, why don't you add books as well? So I think it all needs a critical mass and the right time for us to go into these verticals. And I think newspaper, if coming to think of it now, we should have done it before,
Right.
but never too late. So we've got a big chunk of users now reading daily on Magzter. Earlier magazines would be weekly or monthly. Now our daily active users has gone through the roof thanks to newspapers, because people come back every day to read the news.
We jump straight into the conversation. Firstly, welcome to the show. Girish, so you're the current CEO at Magzter?
Yeah.
And you have a co-founder who
Yeah.
also has built Magzter with you.
Yeah.
And how are you guys, you just mentioned, your apps have gone through the roof. At least the downloads and reads have gone through the roof given COVID and everybody reading newspapers. Is that the case? Is that how you're looking at?
Yeah, we've actually seen a big shift in habits in the last 2 months because of COVID. I think print content is great to read. We love the print media, except that it's not getting delivered right now because of the lockdowns, because of various reasons. So a lot of print publishers are reducing the print circulation, but scrambling to move to digital. So a couple of things are happening. One is user habits are changing because they're not getting it. I mean, classic example, my mom, 77 years old, Magzter owner's mother, still read in print till last month. And when her favorite newspapers didn't reach home, she came and said, how do I get these on my mobile? And I said, we run Magzter, right? So she's like, yeah, but I don't know how to get newspapers there. So then she became a paid customer about a month and a half ago. So it took 9 years and being owner's mother to even figure out. But then she did, and now she's reading every day multiple newspapers, not just the one that or two that she subscribed. And then she actually believes that this is pretty cool. So finally, I've become useful in the household.
Well, while we're on the topic of COVID and its impact, I know you're an active fitness enthusiast. I read somewhere that you had gold medals in rifle shooting. And
yeah.
Are you still continuing all of that? How are you doing it in lockdown?
My rifle shooting days are kind of over, but I've got my kids to start shooting. So they've actually won some medals in the junior category as of now. And
Wow.
One of my contemporaries, I mean, I used to be a rifle shooter. I don't know if you know the difference between rifle and pistol. I mean, rifles are these huge things you carry in both hands, and it's 5 kilos each, and it's a very different animal. Pistol shooters like James Bond, you come with a small briefcase, you put your gun there, you shoot, you win a bunch of medals, and then you go back. Right. So always when we were rifle shooters growing up, we always looked at the pistol shooters and said, why are we not doing that? But since we had gone down the path of rifle shooting and we were doing really well, and we enjoyed what we did, we kind of stuck to that. But when the choice came for the kids and said, we have rifles at home, right? These are match weapons which we use, and they've used to win so many medals, and they still work very well, and they're even now being used globally. So we said, you know what? I told my wife that, you know what? I don't want my daughter and son to carry these humongous things and walk around airports and go around internationally if they're even choosing that path. And we switched them to pistol shooting.
Okay.
So they actually shoot the pistols as we speak, though they're 13 and 14. And it's been great to watch them. And they do what's called dry practice during the lockdown. They cannot shoot, obviously, but they hold their guns in hand, and then they aim at a target on the wall, and they can just practice on a daily basis. And they're doing it, which is surprising because they like what they're doing. Right? And of course, I think added to the fact that they're also playing PUBG and Counter-Strike and all that, actually holding a real gun in hand gives them some reality to what they're doing on these gaming platforms.
I was going to say, like, can you use the Wii to do the same thing, or do you actually need the rifle at
yeah, you actually have to have the weapon, because only then you can do it in real life, in a competition. But yeah, I'm sure they'll find ways to make that virtual as well. And I'm sure right now there'll be somebody thinking about technology where everyone's at home.
Yeah.
You have your gun connected to the system, and you aim at an imaginary target and click, and it scores.
Virtually, it shows you.
It shows everything there. I'm sure that's coming up. I think there's always these things. So yeah, so we tried to be active even during the lockdown.
Nice.
So yeah, so I've been doing a lot of crazy stuff. I mean, I've done some mountaineering. I've climbed a 14er Mount Yale in the US.
Okay.
Right, that was about many hours of trekking without that much of practice. I thought, okay, mountain. I mean, we can climb a mountain, right? It was really toward the end. I was like, I'm going to die before I reach the top. But then when you reach the top, it's like you've been there, you've done that. It's really amazing. It's the same thing with like marathon, right? I took some 4-5 months. My co-founder and I used to run 5K, 10K all the time. But then running a 42K marathon was like pretty much the pinnacle of running, right? Of a long distance. So in 2014, my plan was to run a full marathon before I turned 40. So December 2014 was Chennai Marathon, which was pretty much almost the last marathon possible before my birthday in Jan. So Vijay and I ran that, and we completed the marathon, 42 kilometers. So I think it's all in the mind. If you put your mind to it, I think you can pretty much do anything.
It's interesting you say it's all in the mind, right? I had this gentleman, Gary, who worked with me in my last company. He used to run 100Ks, 100K every 2 months.
Ultra marathons, yeah.
And so he would end up giving these seminars where he used to talk about 100K and how you conquer 100K. And the most interesting thing I heard from that, and I'm sure it's the same in marathons as well, is that you break it down into small parts, right? You break down the marathon into 10Ks or 5Ks, and then he says the first 3 or 4 segments are the hardest. And as you go on, each has its own level of...
everything has got its own challenges, right?
Yeah.
Even for the full marathon, we had a plan, right? But as we were running, we started finding different things happening, right? It is like literally when you're doing your public exam, you've already planned for the whole exam, and you sit in front of the question paper and you look at it, and then there's something that you're not used to. So it's always the reality of it finally hits you. And I think in our case for the marathon, we didn't really break it up into small bits. We just kept on breathing. I think for us, breathing was something which is even a smaller bit.
Yeah.
But I think while everything is in your mind, anything you want to do physically is linked to breathing. Right. And for the last year and a half, I moved a bit from running to yoga.
Okay.
So, and I just figured out that what all I was doing involuntarily while I was running, which is focus on the breathing and relaxing the shoulders and all that, is actually what they're teaching you in yoga.
Yeah.
Right. And being a runner, I was completely inflexible. If I couldn't touch my toes, I could not do any of the above. I didn't believe in stretching even. Right. But now I'm able to touch my toes. That was my Mount Everest, was touch my toes. Now I'm almost keeping my fingers,
Oh wow.
I mean
Okay.
my palms flat. So, but it's taken a year and a half, and but I think all these, it's like you said, either you break it into small parts,
Yeah.
or everything is the way you plan for it, or it's in your mind.
No, I mean, even the Surya Namaskar, right, is actually many steps, and each step has a name attached to it, and you
Yeah,
have to breathe in or breathe out on each of those segments, right?
yeah, yeah,
And it's exactly what you're saying. It's like, okay, you have to focus on that one particular movement and do it well, and you keep getting better. And one of the things that most yogic practitioners tell you is that for that specific, for example, if you're touching your toes, then can you make that toe touch better every single time that you work on it? Is where that incremental effort comes in, and how you get better and how you train your mind to do that better. And I thought that was very profound in a way to think about it, is that yoga doesn't just teach you the movement, but it teaches you a life lesson on how you need to actually um, get to the end goal, which is actually nothing, because you have to constantly keep getting better, and which is why it's very interesting. How did you get into this? What brought you from all the other things you're doing to then yoga?
So I've been always thinking of touching my toes. I think that's where the bottom line was. I'm completely inflexible. Right? You tell me to run. My aim at one point was roll out of bed, run 10k, 20k, and I reached that goal. Right? I could just get up in the morning, wear my shoes, and start running. Right? And people used to call me Forrest Gump and all that stuff. But on the other on the other hand, I couldn't touch my toes. Right? So used to see, and as we grew up, I believe I was flexible, but then over time, all the flexibility is gone. And then I saw my kids got into gymnastics a little bit when they were younger, and they were like flexible and doing cartwheels and all that. And here I'm able to do so much, but I can't do this. So it kind of stemmed from that. And it is a funny story how I got into my current mode of yoga was actually in Chennai. We've got this lounge called Radio Room.
Mhm.
So there's this bunch of us who have gone, my wife, myself, a lot of our common friends. We're there, and then in our table there's this lady also there, and I was busy. I don't drink or smoke or none of those minor vices, right? Only major vices. So there's a lady sitting next to me, and were having a conversation, and she said, I asked, what do you do? She said, I'm a yoga instructor. So I said, wow. So do you go to people's houses to teach? Because my wife and I have been talking about yoga for a while, and one of our closest friends also is a yoga instructor, but she has moved to the other end of town. So we started talking, and I said, if you are able to come home to teach, because I have got erratic times. Being a startup and being an entrepreneur, you can't go on to specific times half your life. So I said, we need somebody who can come home. And literally, this was a Saturday night, and on Monday morning we had the first class, and it's really been great. Her name is Shakti Shilpa. She runs a thing called the Yoga Space in Chennai, and it's been an awesome ride because she's very calm. She knows I can't touch my feet, but now I'm able to do it. I think more because of her, calm attitude and realizing my limitations also. Right? So now my kids also have joined in the yoga.
Okay.
My wife does the yoga, so it's become like a family thing. And now we've also started doing acro yoga.
Okay.
Right? So making people fly and being like a bird, holding them up. So it's actually been a fun ride. So we've been, and lockdown actually has helped more because now we are stuck indoors or on
Yeah.
the roof,
Yeah.
and this has become ideal. So we do skipping for the cardio part, and we do yoga for the rest of it.
Interesting. I've actually been thinking about skipping myself, and I have a rope. I'm just coming off an ACL injury.
Oh my god! Yeah.
Yeah, so I had a surgery, and then now I'm in month 9 after surgery. So I'm slowly piling on.
Then you better start getting back on your feet.
Yeah. Well, no, that's happened a while ago. Now it's like progressively getting better. So you run and then you
baby steps. I think baby
yeah.
steps for everything.
Absolutely. So yoga has been helping me. So yoga is my form of physio, and now it's I think I'm ready to now start skipping and other things. I mean, for longer durations. I tried skipping before, but it
Absolutely.
didn't really help. So, you currently are based out of Chennai, but you also have an office in New York, and you
So
run
I'm
the
based out of
company.
New York and currently I'm locked down in Chennai.
Okay.
So I'd come for a board meeting which was scheduled to be in Singapore in February. So because our investors are, we have a Bangalore investor called Kalaari Capital and a Singapore investor called Singapore Press Holdings. So we were going to have a board meeting in Singapore in February. That got moved to Bangalore because of COVID, initial COVID fears. And then I was here in Chennai saying that, okay, now even Bangalore we couldn't make it. So then it became literally like a Zoom call, which was, we used to do conference calls all the time. But then this whole Zoom call was the first time we did it in February. And then after that, within a week, a whole bunch of lockdowns started. And by March, everything was in lockdown. So I'm actually happy I'm stuck in Chennai rather than New York because New York is where my co-founder is. He's in West Windsor, Princeton, New Jersey. They are facing a lot of more troubles than we are here. And I'm at home with family, mother's next door. So I think it all worked out well for me. And I think after a couple of weeks of lockdown, I think my family wants me to leave, go back, go back to New York, right? But I don't know. I don't know when the next flight out is going to be. So whenever that happens, I surely will be back in New York for a bit.
So the team is based out of New York or in.
So we have teams in New York, London, Mexico. In India, we have a larger presence. I mean, we have our entire back office team in Chennai. So we have nearly 90 people in Chennai itself. And then we have people in Bombay, Delhi, Bangalore, and also in Singapore as well.
So these are all. I believe the teams that are based across the world are primarily sales teams.
Yes, most of them are in sales business development, right? We've got because our main business is B2C, right? Consumer and buys Magzter products, Magzter Gold. But in the last year and a half, we've been looking a lot at B2B opportunities, right? So we have been working on that. A lot of corporates are buying in bulk for their teams and for their employees. We've got, for example, TCS has bought for all their employees worldwide. Accenture has bought it for all their India employees. Hyundai has bought it. A lot of, I mean, Roche Pharmaceuticals. People are all buying this for their employees as a perk. And literally in the last 2.5 months, we've been flooded by a new deluge of orders for people who want to give this as a not a perk, but actually as a necessity to their teams to read newspapers and magazines through Magzter. So we've been a bit of a beneficiary at this COVID crisis on both engagement as well as new orders that are coming in.
So how does that work? So you create a bulk order for Magzter Gold, and then give it to the employees. So they just hand over to the employees. This is the code. Go and access your yourself, and then you can. I'm trying to imagine how does it work and why is it a perk?
So the company buys it, right? The company pays for it, not the employee. So if the employee buys it, then it's not a perk anymore. But if the company is buying it, they want it for a couple of reasons. One is, of course, to be updated with latest info. More like because a lot of WhatsApp forwards are fake news. They want to get more mainstream news as a habit. It's also part of like learning and development because it's not just newspapers or just mainstream magazines, but we've got a lot of niche content which is varying from backpacking to cycling to fishing to, I mean, we've got content relevant to pretty much any area, right? We've got B2B magazines, we've got B2C magazines. So a lot of whether you're a doctor or an engineer or a car enthusiast or whatever, maybe a fashionista, we've got something for everyone. So that is a big benefit that we have been having. And another interesting technology kind of piece that we have built, which we are now rolled out and now kind of seems like more needed at this phase, is what we call smart reading zones. Right. So smart reading zones are like a geo-fenced locations anywhere on the planet that can, what do you say, where people who enter the zone can read for free.
Oh.
Right. So anyone who enters a physical.
So you're a university or a college. or school,
Exactly.
then all those students or anybody who comes to that zone and think of it as a learning zone would then access the content.
Correct. So we have now we start off doing it with, like, for example, natural salons. About 600 salons have become smart reading zones. So anyone going and sitting in a salon can read for free, right? And naturals will pay for it. We've also got Apollo Hospitals Group, the Chennai and Delhi hospitals. All of them are smart zones. So while patients or inpatients, people waiting for doctors, all of them can read, which is kind of brought to you by the hospital itself. So somebody has to kind of pay the bill, right? So sometimes it's hospitals. And for example, Lupin Labs had done a deal with 3,500 clinics, where all of them became smart zones. Smart zone brought to you by Lupin Labs or Novastat, which is their product. So different ways of kind of delivering the content to people who have nothing else to do, right? So now we are in current talks with Changi Airport, Delhi Airport, Mumbai Airport, Gatwick, JFK. So airports are a perfect smart zone location where people are going to be there waiting, and now with the new norms, even more waiting time for people. So give them free newspapers and magazines, and in an airport, it's even better use case because they want to then read it on the flight as well. So you can download it while you're at the airport and then read it in flight. So you can download 10 magazines and 5 newspapers, and then either the airport pays for it or we get sponsors to pay for it. It's going to be a win-win for everyone. And also hotels. That's another place where we're getting a lot of inbound inquiries for hotels because now they want touch-free for everything. Earlier, they used to hang newspapers on every door. They'll keep magazines. Now they can't do any of that. There are mandated norms where less touch is required. So we have been getting a lot of inbound inquiries from large hotel chains to see if the smart zone can be extended for their use case as well.
When you mentioned that they used to have these papers hanging, etc., it reminded me that a lot of this is because that not only do those papers want to get distribution amongst a certain segment of audience, but also they would have different jackets, right? Different ads would be on that, right? So they could also vary pricing for those ads because they say, hey, these sets of papers would go to the airport, right, etc. They had the flexibility to charge differently for the space. Wouldn't that change drastically in a magazine because your interaction with ads is very different and print etc. changes?
No, I think everything is bound to change, right? So I think it's not only about print or digital. I think the consumer forces the change. And right now, I think COVID is also forcing the consumer's hand into the change, right? If you left it to the consumer, they may behave in a different way. But I think COVID meets consumer and this current scenario where nobody wants to touch physically any of this content. And the fact that there's a lot of free content available, but people still pay and buy because they trust these brands, right? They trust this content, whether it's a newspaper or magazine. They want it in that format that they used to for so long, right? So I think one is on the advertising side, those inside the zones, we have options to advertise. So which means if advertising comes into the zone content, the publisher still makes their share of the revenue, right?
Okay.
So if I'm reading an India Today sitting in Delhi airport and I'm able to put an ad in there, and a share of that goes back to India Today, and they get a much larger audience with zero effort, right? They don't have to send someone to the airport. They don't have to put jackets. It's eco-friendly, right? So they don't need to put more plastic and paper and get advertising. Here they're part of a larger ecosystem, and as a policy, Magzter is very publisher friendly. So whenever we make money, publisher makes money, right? Because they're our raw material, right? We don't create our own content. So we really want to be pro publisher and also be pro consumer by giving them all these new ways of going through the content. And for example, the entire city of West Windsor, where my co-founder Vijay lives, has become a smart city. So the citizens of the city can end up paying a fee to the city or part of their their tax dollars, and now all of them can read unlimited newspapers and magazines from wherever they are in the township. So we've been able to, and now we are speaking to Singapore government to see if the whole country of Singapore can become a smart zone.
That's very interesting. How did you guys come across this kind of a model? Did you model it on something that you saw?
See, actually, we were earlier looking at colleges and, like you write, is an education institution, and they had these IP based library and physical place, and they wanted to allow the content in there, and that was we felt was very old world archaic technology, and it's only allowing people who have access to that computer to read. So we were thinking how to give multi access at the same time, right? So, and we realized everyone's got a mobile in their hand, not in schools, but at least in colleges, right? So we thought of how we should build that CAD, and at the same time, there was this US company which was selling tickets, which was, I believe, you pay a $9.99 and you can watch any movie you want. I think it was kind of Indo-US company, Movie Pass, exactly. So all of us went and got the Movie Pass. But it's very interesting the way they did it. Of course, I don't know if they still exist. They were in big problems, right?
They spent a lot of money.
Yeah, they spent a ton of money. So, but the consumer benefited, right? And their model was originally, I believe, they went to AMC and Regal Cinemas, who didn't want to deal with them, right? They said, we don't want to talk to you guys. So they had an algorithm which gave everything to the consumer, but without having to get a deal with AMC or Movie Pass. So we wanted to create these zones for like airports, for wherever in the world, without talking to the airport. So why don't we make this? I mean, why should we talk to an airport to give their customers free? It's not their customers; they're just consumers from all over the world. So with that thought, we said, we'll need to find a way to reach those consumers without going and tying up, right? So it started from that, saying, okay, how do we go to an education institution without talking to the institution, or go to an airport without talking to the airport operator? So that's how it started, right? And then, of course, when we got into it, we realized we do need the institution to support it, and we do need the airport to support it. Otherwise, consumer doesn't get to know it exists, right? So now, actually, for education, we have done something very interesting in the last during the COVID. I call it my COVID baby, right? We've been ideating about education for a while, and because now everyone's worked from home, and everyone's become, I think, more productive because there's nothing else to do, right? The entire team, we huddled together and we put together what we call Edster. So Edster app, the Android app, the iOS app, the web, the entire project was completed. Of course, forget about the years of ideation, but from start to finish within 3 weeks.
Wow.
Because of the COVID situation, everyone's at home, everyone was collaborating, right? And everyone worked to that cause. And within 3 weeks, we had a functional everything. And within the last 10 days, in 3 countries, about 30 colleges are using Edster. Right? They're now on free trial, of course, but we will be moving them to a paid model once they actually start. So it's basically the trending articles, newspapers, and education content from Magzter sitting in a separate app called Edster. So it's been again, it's something that opened our eyes to say, hey, if we really want to do it, we can do it in record time. Because usually, if this project would have taken 3 years.
Right. In this world, when you say trending and especially educational content, those two things don't go together, right? So how do you evaluate that?
So the way we are talking about that is that, for example, my kids are learning about the atom, right? So they're learning about Niels Bohr and the physics of it and what is an atom and stuff like that. But for example, last week the CERN laboratory in France has actually done a breakthrough beyond Higgs boson particle, for example, right? They will never get to know that, right? But while they're reading about this atom and they go to the Edster and they see that, hey, this is the thing that happened yesterday about the thing that you're learning, which is from 19th century, right? Or 1855 or whatever.
Yeah.
You then, that's trending for you as a kid, right? It doesn't have to be trending in terms of cool things to know, but it is something that will open your eyes to new things in the field. Like, for example, we are speaking to big universities, like which are focused on to, for example, medical science, right? So doctors, right? So what they learn in their textbooks or their curriculum is pretty much outdated at least by 5 to 10 years. But when they come and read on Magzter, it's becoming a research tool for them. So they go to our search, they search for, I don't know, APLD procedure or something like that, or your ACL procedure. Some doctor would have done something path breaking 10 days ago, which unless they find it or it's there in the community, they'll never get to know. So it's kind of opening their eyes to these news which are relevant to their specialization. So that was kind of why we said trending.
So are you plugged into some of these other repositories that house journals and research?
So we are talking to all of them. There are a bunch of them who won't come on board because that's their bread and butter to sell these repositories to the colleges. But they don't have the content we have, right? So even the journals are printed once in 6 months, once in a year, right? Our magazines, though they are called magazines, they actually have great content relevant to many stuff, right? So if you see even a newspaper, right, they have sections which show breakthroughs in technology which happened yesterday or day before yesterday, which a journal will then take 6 months to produce.
Girish, tell me something. Isn't that industry also ripe for disruption? I mean, this whole concept of just storing journals and then you can only access it through some of these institutions, etc. I still think it's archaic.
No, it's archaic, but they're like right now they are kind of it's ripe for taking provided you have the institution buy-in, right? So students unfortunately have not much of a say. It's only the institution or the people who decide there at that level, and they're very much embedded for many years, not like 1 year, 2 years, like 100 years. They've been embedded with large institutions, and they become like the gold standard of if I have an institution of this category, I need to have this 5 subscriptions, right? So we are starting by being the 6th subscription that they need, right? And then of course we can start going into the rest of it.
It's called a sneak attack. I heard recently that you mentioned, I don't know what it is post-COVID, but pre-COVID, you had a little more than 1 million downloads a day.
A month. I think it was in a day. In a month. 1 million downloads a month. 1 million downloads a day means I'll be maybe, I don't know, in a different league by now. But 1 million downloads a month. Actually, we've got about a 20% jump up in terms of downloads in the month of April and a 50% jump in May.
Oh, wow.
So actually, it's been 1.5 million downloads in the month of May, which have been really phenomenal. And we have done nothing about it. We've done nothing to get there, right? We just maybe at the right place at the right time with the right product. And things are looking good. I think April, May have been great months for the business aspect, and engagement is 100% more and 200%. Everything is in 2x, 3x, 4x in terms. And we've, like I said, done very little about it. But of course, we have been using this opportunity to reach our message, to market to maximum. So we've increased our marketing spends to reach more consumers at this stage.
You believe that all the consumers you get now will continue reading? How do you typically look at a spike? Because when I remember in e-commerce, any campaign or a sale would basically mean that we would basically move the plateau from stage 1 to stage 2, right? So you're going to bump and then it'll taper off and then you'll have a new normal. How do you look at in this business?
So we are also in a similar stage. I mean, we've been seeing these spikes due to various reasons, either due to marketing or due to some new breakthrough or sometimes new content that we've got on board. So we've seen these spikes. So this particular spike is still going on the upside, right? So we believe that next few months we'll still have a continuous upward trajectory. And then, of course, it will start tapering off, which is why we are now looking at these smart zones and these new innovative ways, so that not only will it spike that way, but it will sustain the growth over a period of time.
So these other engagements are more for longevity and engagement rather than
Correct.
But
we've also seen that anyone who comes and subscribes to Magzter Gold and is there for maybe a few months and experiences the product, they are there in our system for life. once they're there for a long time at least, right? For example, the first cohort of customers for Magzter Gold who came in 2015 January, still 70% of them are our customers even today, which if you look at in any other subscription platform is phenomenal. And they also as customers know that we keep on adding content, right? So every day we're adding newspapers and magazines and journals and books. So for that one subscription that they've taken, every day they find new things to do or read.
How does the publisher rev share work in this case? Because I would imagine the eyeballs and the time would still remain limited, right? And now you're spreading that across more content, more journals.
So
more
our
magazines.
subscription revenue so the Magzter Gold revenue sharing model is very transparent with the publishers, and they've really embraced this model. It's an engagement model. So if you pay, for example, 3,999 rupees or $99 a year, and you are reading, for example, this month you read 3 magazines and 2 newspapers, right? So we know what you've read, how many pages you read in each, and the pricing of each of that. So the algorithm that we have created will apportion the money that you have spent on Magzter to those content that you have engaged with, right? So it's not like everyone gets the money as soon as you pay, right? So supposing you end up reading only one magazine through a whole month, then the one magazine will get the money for that month, right? And most people we have seen are reading 8 to 10 different titles in a month, right? Of course, there are people who read 1 or 2, but the average in the last 2-3 months, I think the average user is reading at least 7 to 8 titles in a month. So it could be a mix between newspaper and magazine. So which means that money gets split among those publishers.
On Amazon, there is the self-publishing model where people can publish their own books and then get in front of people and earn whatever 99 cents for each book that they publish, and somebody purchases something. Are you enabling something like that on Magzter as well? That because the discovery is possible.
Yeah.
Right?
So we are looking at more not of self-publishing, because books are one-time item, right? Magazines and newspapers are a continuous project, right? It's not something it's not like fire and forget. It's not like music or movie where you make it once and you're done, right? So here it's a daily or weekly or monthly continuous update. So, but we are looking at user-generated content as one of our genres. So we've already created everything, but we have not yet launched because we are waiting for the right time. But right now we are still growing in the subscription business, and user-generated content means ad revenue, and ad revenue is still between Facebook, Google, and 3 others. Ad revenues are all focused towards them, right? So creating another ad-supported platform, unless it's very niche, is not going to help us, we believe. But as a first step towards that user kind of community, we've launched something called Magzter Connect inside our Magzter app, and we have thousands of users who can. It's like a Instagram meets Pinterest inside Magzter with Magzter content itself, right? Because one of the biggest sources of images in the world is magazines. Glossy, beautiful, editorially curated, and art director is involved, right? And they don't make any money after the issue is it's rolled out. So here, the users can clip these, put them up, and when people are reading more, they can come back and buy the original content as well. So it becomes a revenue model rather than just being out there in the World Wide Web and doing nothing much with it. So that's something we've just launched, Magzter Connect. So I think a lot of things we keep on thinking and ideating of innovating, and I guess that process is continuous for us.
I mean, if you've had users who have stuck with you since way back in the day, when was the longest? When did the user first sign up?
So we've got users who signed up from pretty much. I mean, day one there were only 2 customers. I think Vijay and me, right? So we quickly bought Magzter subscription mainly to check if it all worked in the live store. But we do have customers who've been there from literally the first month. And those days we only sold individual magazines, and those guys have moved on to Magzter Gold, right? And I think we've got a big number of customers who have been there from day one. And then we've got also power users who are reading 50, 60 magazines a month, and magazines, titles, right? And a couple of them have even told us have reached out to us to show how much money we saved them, being an aggregator and stuff. So I mean, it's heartening to see that we are able to have a service that's useful to people, and B, it saves some people a lot of money, and B, the publishers still get a lot of money because more people are using this.
From the form factor standpoint, there, I always felt the phones have always been too small to give you the same experience as a magazine. Has there ever been a limitation?
So it was a limitation till we brought, like for example, most of our subscribers, if you see in 2011, 12, 13, 14, 15, maybe 80% of our subscribers were iPad users. So they or a tablet, I would say tablet user skewed towards iPad. So they had Apple. Most of our customers used to be Apple, right? Because they were, I think, born in the ecosystem of buying things. Android customers never ended up buying anything; they wanted free, right? So that was in the early days, right? So till 2015, 16, and then we saw a big spike in mobile usage because everyone had a mobile, and I think WhatsApp and kind of those apps moved everyone to use from feature phone to smartphone. So then we saw a big spike in mobile usage, and then we started thinking of form factors, and then we launched the story section, which is basically an AI-driven section in Magzter, which reads every page and every article of content and does two things with it. One is it allows you to search within that content to find what you want. In even, for example, today's newspaper or yesterday's magazine, everything gets indexed into that search and it gives you that discoverability. And the second one is curated stories to your liking. So the AI engine, we are working with IBM's Watson, which reads everything and then populates what's called your feed. So when you open Magzter and see stories, it will be different from what I see. So based on my reading habits, and those are specifically meant for mobile reading. So while the replica content is good I would say maybe a decent experience on an iPhone or a phone format or a small format. The stories, the connect are all built only for phone. Okay, they're perfect and they're easily shareable. You can save. You can find there are dictionary features. There are all the features that you would expect. There's text to speech. You can listen to the story instead of so there's all the features that you would think one should have are like night mode and reverse view and font changes. All that is there in the stories section, but not in the replica section because those are pretty much replicas of the magazines and newspapers.
But aren't you able to get publishers to create those magazines for a version to be consumed on the phone?
I think publishers today are rather they are happy doing what they do best, right? So they have their website where they put a lot of content for free, and which is ad supported, and they have these versions or replica versions where they are getting subscribers to pay for. So they don't want to go beyond that, and we need actually what is in those replica versions to come as stories, because what is on their web is anyway available for free, right? There's no value add in that. Of course, it's great to have, but we also have a feed section in Magzter, but I don't really talk much about it because it's only like an internal thing for our own consumer base, right? It's not something because you can read it for free as well and go without paying. But our core value proposition is in the core content that we have, and those content is where the story section comes from. And publishers at this point are so focused on making those versions and that nobody is spending time on this as yet. I am sure things change over time.
Because I would find that would be the biggest limitation, right? Because when I was a user of Magzter, that was what used to really bother me the most, because it was very hard to have to zoom in, read, and have to do that because it's not a great experience. There's a lot of friction to that.
No, but now in the new normal, I've got used to it. Like for me also, it was a bit of a pain. But then I get my morning newspaper and my favorite magazines. I can quickly flip through, and I can finish that newspaper in less than a minute, and I'm able to see what I want to see. I zoom in what I really want to see. I'll bookmark what I want to read later, and within a few minutes I can finish a newspaper. and I don't have to go and, wherever I am, the newspaper would be in my hand. So that is I guess, a big benefit of having that. And we've also launched e-commerce, which was actually just launched pre-COVID. It's one of those things that I think has died because of COVID in Magzter, where if you go to the Magzter app, you can actually buy the entire look of James Bond from his next film, which came from a magazine, right? So we've got the entire look. You can actually, we have affiliate marketing. We've got affiliate
links
with links, not the links, actually the buy buttons from different providers, including Amazon, where you can buy that exact products and mimic the look, right? We've got Kareena Kapoor's look, we've got Daniel Craig's look, and these are from magazines, and hundreds of people were started buying.
Really?
And everything went into lockdown. So now if you go to that section and click buy, it'll show you the website and say not deliverable, right? So we sold a reasonable number for a first start, and that was one of our discussions during our last board meeting in February, saying, hey, guess what, we've got this amazing thing and this is how it's working, and already see these are the orders that got fulfilled, and within 2 weeks it's all dead, right? So I think when everything comes back to life, that could be an area where we would still, like, content to commerce, right? So that's something that we are looking at maybe 2021 now.
That's been talked about for a long time. I'm glad some people actually best poised to achieve that, because you have the users and you have the content. Now it's about the commerce, right? I don't believe you can actually create this whole system vertically yourself. And
it's going to be, there are a lot of people who are trying that, doing it all in one thing. But what we are seeing in the market today is a lot of services which are like, if you see Daniel Craig's outfit, they will give you a close match, right? Which is not what we are trying to give. We are saying if you want those Tom Ford glasses, you pay 78,000 rupees, and Magzter will make 3,000 from that, right? So that is where we are coming from, right? If you want Kareena Kapoor's Dolce and Gabbana outfit for 4 lakh rupees, here is the link. Magzter will make 18,000 of that, right? So we are not in that pennies business where we want to sell billions of dollars with no margin, right? So we are curating it in such a way that it is actual products that you're seeing, and at some point we can also get advertisers to put their products also there and then sell it.
Just take a step back. You had mentioned that you had a services business which then launched a product which is Magzter, and then Magzter took a life of its own. Did the services business go to the wayside, and or did that become Magzter, or did you keep it separate?
So I think the advantage throughout my entrepreneurship life is I've always had good partners, right? So I think I've been lucky with that. So C.R. Venkatesh, who's my college senior in engineering college, Gindi, he and I started this company called .com Infoway in the year 2000, and that same company launched Galata.com, Galata magazine, which was where the idea of Magzter came. So it was a kind of evolutionary. So in 2010, when we were talking about Magzter and how we should do this as a separate division, it was sitting inside .com Infoway. And when we decided to kind of de-merge it, we had a similar meeting like this, which we talked about what are the possibilities. So Magzter was something new; it could fly or fail. And .com Infoway was something already generating good profits and a good business to be in. It had Galata magazine, had a traditional business. So I got, we literally discussed, and CRV, as we call him, CRV said, I'll take care of this, you take care of that, right? So that's how we kind of de-merged. So I still have shares in .com Infoway. He still shares in Magzter. So it kind of win-win. So both the entities, so both entities continue to grow. And luckily, touchwood, Magzter has gone the right way, and so has .com, right? So things have been good on both sides. So that's how we split. But then the mindset was very different. I mean, I come from services mindset. From services mindset, it's all about number of people you can hire, number of projects you have in hand, and for example, who's going to pay the month-end bills. So I think an entrepreneur, I think at least 30% of his mind share goes into end of month. right? So that entire 30% to 40% of his mind that goes to end of month, who's going to pay the bills, is, I think, stifling entrepreneurs globally. So when
I
we
think,
started Max,
sorry, just
go ahead,
to,
go ahead.
that's a question I had actually. So, because I know that today, and I think every day, a lot of services companies want to become a product company, right? Because they don't want to spend that time, continuously looking for clients, seeing when they will get the next check, and so on. They always have this, point in their life. They're like, you know what, I'm done with just the services business. I want to get into a product. What would be your advice for those services businesses? Are always, either to get a product, trial a product, try a product. What would be your advice to them?
So when we did Magster, it was a bit of an evolutionary step. Actually, it was not like suddenly we came up with an idea of Magster, right? So we had our own app team, we had our own magazine. We saw demand for magazines, and our own magazine was actually on Zenio in 2007, 8, 9, right? And it was on Zenio even when we launched Magster. And we realized that as a publisher, I should be on all platforms, right? Just because he's a competitor does not mean my product should not be there, right? So we kind of, but we were learning all the time on new technologies and new ideas. And frankly, Zenio was quite not publisher friendly, right? So that was one of the things that we took up as a USP from our end. And God, we were nobody in the business, and we literally within a 6 to 12 months, from 35 magazines, we went to 1,500 magazines. Because we had publisher friendly policies, publisher friendly technology. We literally co-opted publishers for everything. So it was really a different kind of way to go to that. So going back to from services mindset to product, we had a bit of a better situation because, like I said, evolutionarily we went to Magster. But even then, there was a thing saying, who's footing the bill, right? There's no revenue coming from Magster. So we then went to raise funds, right? So we met nearly 22 VCs. We did all that stuff because I think if you don't have that either a profitable business which can fund it for a period of time or a right angel investors or your own money, your ideas will get stifled, right? And if you're a product services company doing a product, you need to have someone own that product, right? In our case, it was myself, and then I kind of took Vijay from .com into Magster, right? And he was our CTO, and he had his own business he was running earlier, so he had the tech background and the business acumen, and was a perfect fit, right? So we were friends, and we were able to do business together. And I think you should have the right team and right ownership of that product, right? If the product is owned by someone who lives and breathes that in a services company, you can make it a success, right? And you should also identify at some point that it's working or not working, right? Because in services business, if it's working, means you're making more money. If it's not working, you're hoping that you will get the next client or the next product. So I think it's a sometimes a tough transition, but it's again in the mind, right? You need
But
to
do you
get out
think?
of this services
But do you think it's
mindset into a product.
But do you think it's a trap? Because a lot of the times you're looking at all the companies that you're probably making products for. They're going out to raise money. They're going out to do well, etc. And you're always in that view that I'm in the driver's seat. I'm creating the technology that's powering their business.
No, very true. I think a couple of companies from whom we fully supported their technology and everything from the back end. Both have become, one of them had a multi-$100 million exit. We got nothing of it, right? The owners took the money, right? They have got large mansions in the US and stuff. But I mean, I think each one has to realize where they come from, right? This is like saying the driver of the car is not the owner of the car, right? So if you want to be the driver and owner, you have a different skill set, different mindset, and then you do the right thing. But then the maintenance, petrol, accident, insurance, everything is your headache. If you're the driver of the car, you just have to drive. If it fails, also it's not your problem, right? So you make your money, you be contented with where you are, and then go to the next. But yeah, if you're able to balance that, then you can figure out whether you want to be the driver or the owner.
It comes down to the skin in the game. It comes down
Yeah,
to skin in the game.
exactly.
Um, from the evolution of Magzter, are you looking at it differently? There was if you look at Amazon, they created, almost they pioneered the e-ink concept and came up with the Kindle, right? Which could basically allow somebody to access and manage, the tools, books rather, in a better way, and resulted in more consumption of that content, right? And people swear by it. Nobody able to replicate it the same way as, the success of the Kindle. You could obviously argue that Kindle doesn't make that much money, and that's a completely different argument. But is Magzter looking at it differently in terms of the technology, in terms of vertical integration, maybe?
So we are not looking to get into any hardware. That's the question, right? Because we've seen that even Kindle, like you said, is not making money. But many players who entered that market to make these devices, every month there's a new device, a new technology. Is very difficult to cope with this whole rat race of technology, right? So that I think is a bigger concern for us, because we want to make software and make it enable. Like for example, Smart Zone is pretty much BYOD, right? So whatever device you bring into the zone, you should be able to use. So instead of going and changing the screens or the technology, which in a long term, even for a company like Amazon, doesn't make sense, right? It's specifically for book reading, and everyone who reads a book already has a Kindle. I think it's reached that stage. They tried the Kindle Fire, which was an absolute failure, right? Which is I think I don't even know why. I mean, somebody obviously said you need to now go to color, because for example, even in our business, you can't read a magazine on a Kindle. You can read it on a Kindle Fire, right? And because it's color, and you can't read color on Kindle on the e-ink. But each one has got its own purpose. But as a policy, we never wanted to. A lot of people have told us, you should have a Magzter device and read all you can and buy the device also. But then we are, I think, more of a mindset of technology and innovation in software and content and delivery, rather than the hardware part of it.
Fair enough. I mean, it's obviously a very different thought process you need to have. Also, I would imagine resources.
Yeah.
Do that. You'll have to marshal your resources, probably in a way that will give you.
I'll just have to raise another 200-300 million, and then get into the hardware business, and then fight with Amazon and Apple and Samsung and all the multi-billion-dollar companies. I think today, when Kindle came out, there was no devices in a big way, right? And for books, it was the right time. But today, I think even people are not buying too many Kindles because your phones are sufficient, and whatever device you have also has a Kindle app in it. So you can download the app, and they themselves have moved to app model. Though the e-ink and all is still revolutionary even till now, but I don't know. It doesn't. It's like saying I have a Hattori Hanzo samurai sword, right? Of course, I'm referring to Kill Bill, but they have no relevance today when I have machine guns and smart bombs, right? So you can still have this amazing sword which you can use, but it's of no use today. You can have it as a relic.
It's a reminder of the past.
Yeah.
So coming to the money part of it, you said you had raised round of capital, was that your first round, which is Kalaari, and was it the only
first round was in 2012, was $3 million from Kalaari Capital, and then we raised another 10 million between Kalaari Capital and Singapore Press Holdings in 2013 December. So it's been nearly 7 years almost since we raised the money, because we ran Magzter A as a startup, but B as an actual business. So while everyone was talking about GMVs and how much burn and all that stuff, we were also burning cash initially. And when you have 10 million in your bank, you burn more. But then as we started depleting the cash, we went back to how do we make this run as a sustainable business, and that has helped us right now. So in the last 2 years, we've become a cash flow positive and a profitable business. So though we keep putting all our extra money back into growth, right, we did not had the need to raise funds again. So I think it's been a good ride on that line.
But do you think you'll have to raise more money if you want to take Magzter to the next level, or you feel like the cash that's coming in is sufficient to plow back into building a solid
So
company.
I think we are coming with these new models like smart zones and stuff like that, where it kind of kind of pays for itself, right? So those are and it also helps to promote, right? For example, if Changi Airport is going to go live with Magzter across the terminal, smart reading zone, Changi ends up paying for it, right? So we get money from it, and we get 60 million people going through Changi every year, or 80 million people who will get to know that Magster exists. And if we do this across, for example, top 100 airports in the world, that would mean maybe more than a million more per day even. To answer your initial number, we could get a million new users a day, right? If every airport in the world goes for this. So I think we don't need money to do this.
Sure.
We only need to be in front of them with the right proposition, and deliver on those on the technology and content.
That's an incredible ROI with almost no investment, and they're paying you for it as well.
Yeah.
Which
So
is
either the airport should pay for it, or we'll get sponsor for it. But at the end of the day, somebody will have to pay for it. So, and the consumer gets it for free in those locations.
You mentioned that both your investors have basically crossed their typical fund threshold, 7 to 8 years. Are they looking for an exit? How are you thinking about that?
So I think Singapore Press Holdings is a balance sheet fund, though they don't have any threshold. It's from their publishing media house. But Kalaari obviously does have a threshold. I think it's somewhere towards the end of next year that they would be looking. But I think things are going quite good at Magster. So maybe it could even be a secondary sale. They may exit and somebody else comes in, or something like that. So I don't know if Kalaari is so anxious at this point, because we are actually still cash flow positive. We're still growing, right? So there are obviously, not forget about just Kalaari, but I think VCs across the globe, many startups are folded or dying, or good companies have got zero business. So they're all desperately trying to sustain, while somebody like us is actually figuring out new ways to grow, right? And how to expand further. So we have a good problem to have. And I think the investor community, Kalaari has always been very supportive to anything that we have done, and I think it's been a good ride with them. And of course, exit is always in a funded startup. Either IPO or exit is always in the roadmap, right? So it's either death, IPO, or exit. So so we have not yet gone to the first one. So the other two are always on the card. So we'll have to see at the right time, at the right price. If there's someone, then we can maybe work with someone else, or get new investors in, or something like that. These are all open at this point.
Fair enough. How are you thinking about hiring at this point?
So we've actually hired about 10 people in the last 1 month. We also have given increments to everyone last month. It was due to a big bunch of staff in May this year. So we have given everyone their appraisals and increments. We have hired more people. We continue to hire as well, and more. We are now hiring more specific to business development and institutional, this B2B segment in across the globe, and we are looking to expand on because we see that is going to be the next big thing for us.
I'll leave your careers page wherever I post the podcast, so that people can find you if in case they're interested. Fantastic. Hey Girish, this has been amazing. Thank you for your time.
Thanks. You too.